Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to December's economic briefing. For those that I've not had the opportunity to meet, my name is Ben Murray, and I'm the Director of Workforce Development here at the Rome Floyd Chamber. I'm so excited for December's economic briefing. I'm excited for our guest today. I believe our special guest is going to have some great information to share about things that are actually impacting a lot of us as we are grocery shopping. And so we've got a few people joining, so we'll get them admitted. At this point, I'm going to introduce our guest speaker today. So our guest speaker is Kathy Kuzava. She is the president of the Georgia Food Industry Association. She has served in that role for over 25 years now. And she actually first discovered her passion for the grocery industry while in high school. And then after graduating with her degree from Georgia State University, she began a career at SuperValue. And she later took on the helm as GFIA's president at the request of some of the independent retailer customers, which whom are still a lot, or actually several of them are still loyal GFIA customers or members today. So Kathy's responsible for the overall management of the association, and she plays a large role in representing our membership at the grocery industry before elected officials and regulatory agencies in Georgia. So that's actually how I got the opportunity to connect with Kathy, is through some mutual legislative friends, and I've seen her around the Capitol for several years now, and so I'm so excited for us to join us today. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Ben. I'm going to go ahead. I told Ben I was going to keep this very, very casual because the supermarket industry and our members, everything changes by the day. And if you've been to the supermarkets, you absolutely understand what I'm talking about. So let me just give you a little bit of a background. In 2018, 52% of the food spend, was spent outside of the stores. So it was spent in restaurants and cafeterias and fine restaurants and fast food, but not in the stores. So 52% was spent away. So we actually were competing with restaurants, and we watched the restaurants take over more and more and more of the food dollar as people started eating out more and more. So that was 2018, 52%. So imagine overnight in March of 2020, that changed absolutely overnight. When businesses closed, people started working in their houses. When schools closed, when the restaurants were shut down, all of a sudden, basically 100% of the food dollar was purchased in our store. And clearly our stores couldn't be ready for that. So all of you are in business. You can imagine if all of a sudden your business was doubled overnight. So what happened is this, of course, people panicked, and we all can kind of remember the grocery store shelves when there was literally nothing on them. And people did panic, and it created absolute chaos for the industry, for our supermarkets, for our wholesale grocers, and for our suppliers. So we went through 4 months of product, 4 months of supply in less than 2 weeks. So you can imagine what we pride ourselves on. The farmers know how much to grow, processors know how much to process, the retailers know how much to order. We've pretty much got it down to a very, very efficient food supply system. And overnight, it didn't work. So we are able to keep the prices as low as we can because of this. We don't have bunches of inventory. So all of a sudden, when we went through 4 months of product, after that, those canned vegetables were done, there weren't any more. We had to wait until the next season to actually have something processed. And so there was just a absolute huge, we didn't have a supply problem, we had a demand problem. So I tried to explain to everybody, because of course the media wants to make this a bigger deal, that people are going to be stuck in their homes forever and ever and not going to be able to find food. We could find food. It just might not be exactly what you're looking for. To this day, we're still amazed that the shelves still aren't full. And so now it's kind of a whack-a-mole situation. You go in one day and they're out of this, and you go the next day and they're out of something else. So it's been a real eye opener. So again, March of 2020, everything changed overnight. I did for our members in our last directory. I took a look at a calendar and just tried to go through what happened over the course of the year, and it was funny. I think everybody kind of remembers where they were when they realized this was real. And for the supermarket owners, we did a presentation at our annual convention, and we had the president, and this was in July. We had the president of Publix, of Kroger, of Food Depot, and a smaller independent store, Piggly Wiggly, that had 5 stores down in South Georgia. And we interviewed them about, and one of the best questions I asked was, when did the pandemic become real for you? And, the funny thing is, it started happening, all of a sudden customers started buying more. Before, the tweets would come and little things would start happening, and customers started getting in our stores more and more. So the top management would get calls and say, I don't know what's going on. Is there a snowstorm? I mean, what's going on? Is there a hurricane? What's happening that all of a sudden people are starting to get lined up? And again, we're used to this in hurricane situations or something. And when it happens in, like, let's take a Savannah, if something happens on the coast, well, we're able to take a lot of product and move it to that area. So we can handle emergencies. But when all of a sudden every single store became hurricane demand in food, it wiped everything out. So even today, the wholesalers and the large grocers are telling me, as fast as they get the food into the warehouse, it's sent out to the stores and it's being sold. So we're still amazed that the demand is still as high as it is. So I want to take you through a couple of situations and talk to you about what we're still experiencing shortages. Initially, of course, you could not get your hands on Lysol wipes, you could not get your hands on toilet paper, and people bought that product as if they were going to be, you get that. If somebody's, oh my gosh, it's going to be short, you start just buying excess. And so we tried to say, save some for your neighbors, that you just stop hoarding. I remember I made my children, my adult children, their Easter basket was Lysol wipes and toilet paper, and they were like, "This is the best Easter basket we have ever had in our lives." But I used to tease my husband. He's like a cleaning supply fanatic. I don't know why, and I used to tease him about, why in the world are you buying so many cleaning supplies? We have just every time there's a BOGO or some sale, he just loves Lysol wipes. And so we ended up having about 12 Lysol wipes in our cabinet, that he was like, this is gold. This is gold. But so you couldn't find Lysol wipes, and all of a sudden people started buying different things. You couldn't find hand sanitizer. Now there's hand sanitizer all over the place. There's cleaning supplies all over. But the retailers had to respond. For example, in spring, they usually do a big spring cleaning sale. And, and the cleaning supplies are at the front. When you walk in the door of a supermarket, there'll be a big cleaning supply, or cleaning supply displays and sales. Well, that had to stop because we just didn't have the product. So all of a sudden, people had advertisements that they were getting ready to run, that they had to change at the last minute because they literally they didn't have the product to offer the customers. So we had to make a lot of changes immediately. One of the things that we did, I know we started having calls with the association, and typically, if I have a government affairs call, if I get 25 people on the call, I'm thrilled, because most of the people are just busy running their businesses and just want to get my updates, but aren't going to want to sit on a call. We went from having a call once every 2 weeks to a call every single day at 10 o'clock. And we were making up rules and best practices as we go, because we've never experienced anything like this. So what we did, we started talking about, I would find something that a store in the state of Washington did, put up these plexiglass that, we had never heard of that, putting up plexiglass in between each cash register. And so I was like, go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, get some plexiglass. And so I'm sending pictures of things. Well, now that's just common practice. But at the time, we were coming up with ideas to try to keep the customers safe. When the governor, when he did close down the restaurants and several businesses, we had to stay open. And it would have been literally panic if if the consumer was not able to get food. So we had to stay open right in the midst of all of the chaos. So we were trying to keep our employees safe and comfortable as everything was changing so fast. So I remember going in the grocery store and people just actually being so kind to the employees and saying, "Thank you so much for being here." I know that that was something that I always said to the cashier, "Thank you so much." And that's when all of a sudden we became the hometown heroes. And people didn't want to get out, but yet those employees were still there and just religiously. And we had to do a lot of things. Some people would change their hours. To try to clean up. We offered try to do extra sanitation and things. We offered senior hours. We tried to do things to accommodate people when they were really nervous to come out. So our employees did become just wonderful. Our labor costs increased, our operating costs increased a bunch because as we pivoted overnight, we had number one, all the different supplies that we went out and got, and then the sanitation stations that we started. And it's funny, you go into a grocery store now and you see the wet wipes where you just, can pull a wet wipe and handle the uh, cart for yourself. Well, we had people coming in and stealing the whole display of wet wipes. So those became again hot commodity. So we had sanitation stations that we had to move inside the store because trucks were coming backing up and just taking the whole station away. So it was interesting what people were beginning to steal. And so again, our labor costs definitely increased at a time when all of these things were going on. So again, schools closing, businesses closing. The big toilet paper issue, people were like, why is there a toilet paper shortage and why can't you fix that quicker? If you think about it, the the companies that make toilet paper, they make one kind for home use because everybody likes the nice soft and I'm Charmin extra soft is my thing. I don't want that one ply tough that you get in offices. I like with the Charmin extra soft. Um, well, they made half of the toilet paper they made was for industrial use, and all of a sudden their customers weren't there. We also had issues with suppliers that would be selling to restaurants. All of a sudden their business model was gone. So you had farmers that would sell to restaurants. All of a sudden produce was sitting there rotting and excess milk. You had so supermarkets were coming on and taking a lot of and you can't do that easily. The bigger the supermarket is, the harder it is just to get a new supplier and do the all the background checks and things. And so all of a sudden we were buying from different suppliers and trying to pivot quickly. And again, the bigger the company, the harder that was. So my Piggly Wiggly stores had a much easier time in pivoting than Kroger or Publix or Walmart. So it was interesting to watch the dynamic of the businesses. So that was early March. Now you come back to, well, first of all, let me give a shout out to Governor Kemp and your two great local legislators. Governor Kemp immediately started a task force and put me on that task force to make sure that for the emergency preparedness, to make sure that he wanted to understand the distribution level of the food, what we could do, what he could do, anything that the state could do to make sure that the food was handled right. They immediately lifted some of the trucking waivers and things so that we could have more product on the trucks to get to the stores because it just literally we couldn't sell it fast enough. And that's when a lot of the limits came on that you saw. People are never happy with those, but we tried to do allocation for people as well as the stores themselves. They would a lot of times when whatever is sold, the stores instantly are ordering that amount. Well, that had to go on allocation because there simply wasn't enough in the pipeline. If you took a Publix or a Kroger, um, every one of the stores would want way more product than they possibly could have. So everything became allocated. So then it just depended on you would walk in and 1 minute there'd be something, you'd go in an hour later and they'd be out of the product. And so that was all just because they had product, they just couldn't keep it in stock. So Then we had the federal government and all the new benefits that were happening. We had state unemployment because so many people were unemployed, and then you had that $600 a week on extra with the federal benefits. And at that point, we had a real labor shortage. And so we no longer the governor came in and asked the feds to stop the $600 for Georgia, and we thought that was going to help our labor issue because now the lines at first were the panic buying lines. Now we still can't service the customers at the level we want to because we just simply can't get the help. And it's been really interesting. This is not only a retail problem, but it's a problem for all of our manufacturers. And I was talking to I called a few people this morning just to get the absolute latest to share with you. And one of my meat distributors, he was talking about the hard time he's having with help. And again, working in a warehouse is a tough job, but he's paying $22 an hour and it's cold in a meat warehouse. There's no question. It's a difficult job, but he's never had problems keeping his employees. In the last 3 months, what he said to his employees is to try to get through October, November, and December because that's the busiest time typically, except for March of 2020. Uh, he said he will pay an extra. Now, listen to this. If you are only tardy 2 times and if you only have one no unexcused absence per month, if you have less than that, then he will give you $1,000 a month bonus. And then if you do that 3 months in a row, look at Ben. Ben's like, hey, I want to sign up for that. So 3 months in a row, if you do that and get him through holiday season, he'll give you an additional $2,000. So just now think about this as business owners. Just to come to work on time, actually you can be late twice and you can actually not show up one day. If you do just that, you can get an extra $5,000 at the end of December. He told me this morning, over half of the employees disqualified themselves within the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks. So this is how, Ben, your face shows it all. My husband just retired from Georgia Power. Timely, being on time, tardiness, that is his number one thing. He had 28 direct reports and they were not allowed to be late at all. That was just my husband's hot button. Get to work on time. And so I told my husband this morning and he was like, I couldn't do it. I absolutely could not work in an environment where I'm managing people that I'm telling you cannot show up one day and still have your job. As a matter of fact, I'll even give you a bonus. So that's the environment that we're having. Now, this meat company, the reason that he's so desperate to make his people happy is because he's got to get the meat shipments to the grocery stores. So if his people don't show up to select the orders, and then the truck driver shortage is another thing that I'll get to in a minute, but the stores are not going to have the meat when the customers come in. So that's some of the problem that on the supply side that we are looking at, just an absolute labor shortage. The labor shortage goes on to talk about our manufacturers. And so some of the things that they started doing early on, if you notice Campbell Soup, for example, what they did, and very smartly, they went ahead and said during the pandemic in the early months, they're going to change the way they manufacture. Some of them went to 24-hour shifts, but they also did only the top selling products. And so a lot of them, and this goes back to the meat company I was talking to this morning, he said that one of the companies processes typically 20 items. Now they're just processing 10. So they're going to process whatever is the easiest that they can get to the stores. So you're seeing just a lot less selection. Campbell Soup, some clam bisque or something that's not one of their best sellers, just they're not making right now. And so they're wanting to keep it because every time they shut the line down to turn to the next product, you have to change things. When Lysol wipes, when they started being produced again, at first there was like the orange scent and the clean scent or whatever. It's like, okay, forget that because they had to shut down the lines, put in the new scent, change the canister from the blue to the orange. they just went ahead and stopped the different scents to just produce just pure Lysol wipes. So that's how some of the manufacturers were getting over the initial, I've got to get out as much as I can. So after the $600 stopped with the federal government, we really thought that people are going to come back to work. And what's happened, well, actually, we don't know what's happened. And you, as business people listening to this, probably are very, very well aware that we just have an incredibly huge labor shortage, and it's everywhere, but especially in those service jobs. If you, I was driving to work today actually, and there was a dump truck in front of me, and now hiring is on the back of his truck. But I think the now hiring sign is just everywhere. You go, and I had a conference in Nashville that I was going to last week, and on the way I needed to stop and use a restroom. I pulled into a McDonald's, dining room only. I pulled into a Chick-fil-A, dining room, or I'm sorry, drive-through only. Chick-fil-A, drive-through only. Taco Bell. I was like, I just need to use the restroom. I don't need to use the drive-through. So that's what's happening is they just can't get the help. So our grocery stores are frustrated because they want to give you good service. They want their product lines to be stocked. They don't want you having to say, I can't get my Jimmy Dean sausage biscuits. They want you to be able to get everything. But right now, for so many reasons, they just can't stock the shelves as much as they want to. Some of the shortages that have happened are ingredients. There's a lot of ingredients that will come that we're just short of, so the manufacturers can't make the product. That's one thing. Packaging, we're having a lot of shortage on packaging. Even the glue to put the label onto a package there's a big shortage of that, as well as the labor. So that's the three reasons: the ingredients, the packaging, and the labor situation is why you're not seeing full shelves right now. Some of the things, I talked to one major retailer this morning that's got stores in Rome, and he was talking about the salty snacks are just a huge issue. So the companies call and say, we have to put you on allocation, and you order this much, but we can only distribute this, certain amount of product. And so pet foods is a real interesting one. Pet foods, there is a huge shortage in canned cat food. And so much of it comes from China. And yeah, Ben, that's what I was like, canned cat food. I don't have a cat, so I didn't know that. But apparently nobody wants to be in the cat food business anymore. So people are actually switching what their pets are eating and things. So that was interesting. But salty snacks is a big one. One of the bread companies, they cut their production in half because they just cannot produce enough and get it out. The demand is they're producing as much, but they've cut their line, and so retailers just aren't getting everything they want. The big thing too that the retailer mentioned this morning, anything with plastics, the juice boxes. If you've got kids and you're looking for juice boxes, good luck. You just pretty much are. It's complete hit or miss, but when you go to the juice aisle, you will see just huge holes. They also got something from Little Debbie this morning saying they're on allocation with Little Debbie. It's so many things now that there are shortages of. Frozen breakfast items are a biggie. My husband eats those little Jimmy Dean sausage biscuits, and apparently they're just about impossible to get. They get them, but they'll be gone immediately. So one of the additional challenges that somebody brought up this morning was that typically in January, companies will shut down their certain lines so that they can do routine maintenance, because usually January is a really slow time. Well, it's nothing but slow. It's not going to be slow in January either. So that he mentioned that if they do decide to shut down those lines to do routine maintenance in January, it's going to cause even more shortages. So again, we've got supply. It just may not be what everybody wants. Talking about labor, one more thing that was mentioned this morning, this is in a major supermarket. He said they set up 10 interviews and only one person will show up out of those 10 interviews. And this is something that is just hurting everybody, but it's especially hurting anybody who needs the customer service. and we're very, very much hiring all the time. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing more and more self-checkout registers. A lot of the companies aren't thrilled with putting them in. At the same time, they're understanding they absolutely have to be able to check out the customers. And so that's one way to offer some service by not making you stand in line, but there's more and more, and I think you're going to find that throughout. Uh, you'll see more and more self checkouts. One of the other things that I thought was interesting was creamer. Um, one of the retailers this morning said they even manufacture the creamer, and this gentleman said they just absolutely cannot keep up with it. He said, I don't know if people are bathing in it or what, but creamer is a hot item. And so I think, again, it's as more people are staying home, they're using more. But you think about it, if you package those little, those little mini moos or whatever in the small packages, anything that involves a lot of packaging is just problematic right now. So I think with that, I think I will open it up for any questions, but I do want to say a big shout out to Governor Kemp, because I've watched other states and he was so wonderful working with us, because we were able to, when all these emergency orders were happening across the state, you have so many cities, so many counties in the state of Georgia, and the initial pandemic, when all this happened, the emergency orders were coming out from individual counties or cities. And so people were trying to keep their customers safe. But what they were doing was they would say, we're going to limit people that are allowed to come into the store. And so trying to keep up with all of those different ordinances was just a nightmare. So it was, it's over 700 when you add the counties and the cities together. So what we did was we went to the governor and said, this is just very problematic and nobody knows what's going on. So he issued a statewide order, and that was so helpful to us. The other thing too is that he did not shut down the state nearly like what other states were doing. So as soon as it was opportunistic to get us back and get back going, the governor went ahead and said, and he got a lot of criticism for it, but he got the economy going, whereas in some states that just didn't happen. So we thank him. We love Chuck Hufsteller. We love Katie Dempsey. They're wonderful, wonderful people to work with. And Katie's, of course, on the Health and Human Services Committee. And I do want to give a shout out for the role that the supermarkets played in the vaccinations. And, we were able to overnight, the state allowed us to give additional vaccinations out. And then overnight, there were just people running in the stores trying to get this. So I think I'm so proud of our stores because they've been able to pivot. They've been able to enroll in healthcare. They were able to keep customers safe and their employees safe, and it's been a challenge. So I just ask you, when you go in the grocery store, if you'll please just say thank you to those people, because those cashiers, I think, are still heroes. A year later, nobody's talking to them like that, but boy, a year ago it was great. I have one small grocer that their community actually did a parade for their employees, and they did two different shifts. This is up in Jasper and Foothills IGA, and they actually had two shifts of people where they provided pizza and actually did a little parade and asked the employees on the day, and then came back again at dinner to thank them for being there. So it's amazing supply chain. Nobody thinks about it. Now they do. But in the past, nobody thought about supply chain. You just go to the grocery store and that's where things just appear. So all of a sudden now, and people are appreciating and understanding. I mean, I think the Minute did a great thing 2 weeks ago about the ports and really showing what is going on with the logjam with the ports. And it was great. And then there's another station this week that's been cooking in supply chain every single day. So again, I think we're going to be appreciated more, and just understand now how delicate the supply chain is. And so I just want to give a good plug for buy local, buy things that are made in this country. because it is important. It's important that we have our farmers. It's important that we have people in this country growing food, manufacturing food. That's real important, and that it keeps our economy and keeps us stable. So Ben, with that, I'll just open it up for discussion.
Kathy, I have a question. Did you notice if it was worse, if supply and demand was worse in a very small rural community versus the large urban areas, or did everybody suffer the same for all of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually had the same shortages of product. We had a better situation with labor there. So that's what I hear from my rural grocers, that their labor task force is still coming compared to the Atlanta area where there's just so much competition. But everybody did suffer the same in shortages.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
One question I have, and also just want to let you know, Kathy, I received a text from Representative Dempsey, and he had a constituent issue arise, and so she apologizes for not being able to join us, but she said she was going to connect with you later on. But my question, I'm just curious, I know you mentioned there's a lot of smaller independent retailers. I know just being from South Georgia myself, Tom Kugel down in South Georgia with Piggly Wiggly. But there's a lot of larger ones. How many members do you serve, I guess, through GFIA? I guess, how many members do you have currently?
Yeah, we've got over 350 members themselves. And then, of course, then there's many, many hundreds of stores with some of them. Tom Kugel is actually the one that was the independent on our panel. And I do have a funny story about Tom Kugel. He talked about the fact that he thought he was so sharp. This is a gentleman who owns 5 stores down in South Georgia. He's out of Tifton, and he found some toilet paper when nobody could find toilet paper, and he was like, "This is great stuff." And his buyers said, "That's not going to go over well." And he was like, "Nope, nope." And he was so proud of himself. Well, it was mango scented toilet paper, and so he said, "Just FYI, nobody wants mango scented toilet paper." So he said his buyers now are saying, you cannot buy. You thought you were so good. So he said, so if anybody's looking for mango scented toilet paper, he has an excessive amount, and nobody wants it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Does anyone else on the call have any questions for Kathy? I have one more, of course. So I know you talked about, this has been going on since March 2020, and you kind of talked about what's coming on the horizon potentially with if the lines shut down for routine maintenance in January. And obviously there's no correct answer with this. What do you think, timeline wise, how long do you think it will be before things will get more somewhat normalized, I guess, with the supply chains? And I know there's a lot of different factors, like you talked about, that play into that with labors and ingredients and packaging. But if you just had to take a guess about what do you think it's going to get more normalized, I guess, with supply issues?
I think it's going to be a good year easily before things settle down, so that you can actually go in the grocery store and pick anything you want. But again, I want to make sure that I say there is no supply problem with food, and the reporters will always want you to go there. And so there's not the supply problem. It's food supply is not the problem. It's the demand. And so again, if you want Ben and Jerry's, you're not going to be able to get every flavor. You still can get Cherry Garcia, which is my flavor, but so that's something you're not going to see. You're still going to see sporadic. I call it whack-a-mole. When you go in, you're still going to have some problems as there are outages. As a whole, it's going to be a good year, or at least a good year before you see everything. Oh, one thing I would like to make a plug for. One of our new grocers is a fellow senator with Senator Hofstetler, and Russ Goodman is a small businessman. He is in South Georgia, Ben, as you know, and he is a blueberry farmer who also opened a all-American cobbler company. and their cobbler is so good. So if you want to get something different for Christmas, I mean, it's like crack. That's how good it is. But it's in the stores now, and he's doing exceptionally well with his cobbler sales. And they just went into business last year, really opening this up. But it's in your frozen food section of some of your stores, and it's oh so good. So blueberry cobbler would be, and they've got apple and peach and all kinds of things. But that would be a great dish for Christmas.
I can attest to the blueberry one myself. I actually picked up, they had a buy one, get one free promo. And it was just because I'd seen it on Facebook at Publix. So I actually picked up a couple to get in the freezer, and you can't beat them. And just knowing that it's supporting local Georgia farmers and local individuals, it's just a great product. So I'm glad that you said that. And thank you for answering my question, Kathy.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me today.
All right. If there are no other questions, Kathy, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it. I knew you were going to be an expert on the subject, and you did not disappoint. So thank you very much.
Thank
now
you.
I'm calling you all the time for questions.
No problem. You've got my number now.
All right. I want to also thank everyone else that was on the call today. We've lost a few, but I know they heard everything Kathy said. Thank you for being here. Please remember to shop local. And for our members that are on the screen, we do have some ribbon cuttings next week. So please join us because we want to celebrate those small businesses too. And with that, I hope everyone has a good weekend.
Thank you.